JB, again, we have some sad news to start the show out with. This is being recorded on Sunday night, and on Sunday morning we received word that longtime St. Johnny's coach, John Gagliardi, has passed away at the age of 91. He was somebody that anybody that knows Division III football would know his name because of the Gagliardi Trophy, which I've been involved with for the last 7 or so years. Down in Salem, Virginia. The sad thing is that Shenandoah, Texas, the host of the Stag Bowl this year, is probably not going to be doing a separate ceremony. So things are going to be a little bit different this year about how it's awarded, but it will still be awarded by the J Club. But let's talk about John Gagliardi for a second. All those wins he had, I mean, it's unbelievable when you think of a football coach that can have the number of wins that John Gagliardi had. He was recognized on ESPN just a few years back there. Nick Saban was talking volumes about how great of a coach he is. Think about Saban, who he is. It's a big loss for college football here in Division III, but the entirety of college football.
Yeah, I thought the D3Football.com piece saying that he was gone too soon was appropriate in the sense that although 91 years and a 64 or whatever or close to coaching career is certainly as long a run as most can expect, it's a coach and a person. The quality of a Coach Gagliardi is just it's very rare, and he's had such a big impact on the sport of football. Particularly with some of his innovative coaching ideas, with the lack of tackling in practice, and just some of the other things that are related to school, like St. John's, so the faith-based and other things, just and some common sense teachings that he's given his players over the years. So definitely a big loss to the D3 football and the broader college football community. For what he's meant to the sport for all these years, and certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to the Gagliardi family and to the greater St. John's University family that he's obviously touched so many hundreds, if not thousands, of lives over his long and illustrious career.
Yeah, 489 wins was the total that he had, and it's just crazy when you think about it. He's a mild-mannered, demeanored guy, or was just somebody that people could speak volumes about that came in contact with him. He raised a lot of men, and you'll see them across many different facets of life, as Pat Coleman points out in D3Football.com's piece. I never got to meet him personally. That was one thing I did want to do and never got the opportunity, unfortunately. But I did get to meet his son, Jimmy Gagliardi, who's stayed involved with St. John's, obviously, through coaching. Jimmy's a class act, and from what I understand, everybody tells me he does take after his father in terms of that demeanor and approach. He will be missed. And yes, 91 years old is a good long life, but his effects will be felt for a long time to come. John Gagliardi passes away at age 91. So let's get back to East Region football. At this point in time, it's kind of our fallback when we have these sad events to open the show with. No doubt. Although I do want to say one thing, catching people up with a story from a few weeks back, Evan Hansen from Wabash passing away. We never got a chance to really tell people that we were taken aback in a good way, per se, by the fact of his father, Chuck Hansen, coming out and basically writing us during the whole ordeal that they were going through that week. Entrusting us with information that we're not going to really elaborate on beyond what's been published publicly, which is they're checking him for CTE type situations. They're concerned that the hits of football may have taken their toll on Evan and his mental state at that point, and so we are not sure what the results are. But that family is a certain kind of strong to be able to, in let's say the 2 days after his death, gather themselves enough to make the decisions to do what they did and to also reach out and create a tribute page for him and everything else they did. I know I couldn't do it if I lost my son or daughter at that age. There's no way I could turn around like that, and it's almost heroic what Chuck and his wife both, but Chuck especially, from what we had in our contact with them, was able to do during that time. Quick thoughts on that situation.
Well, I mean, Thursday we celebrated my son's 12th birthday. Tomorrow will be my daughter's 14th. To lose a child as young as the Hansens had to, even at 22. I mean, you can't. There's no words really. So, we were certainly taken aback by his reaching out to us. We had to be as supportive and respectful as we can, and I think based on the interactions, that's it was nice to see that the family appreciated our sentiments during their very difficult time, and Mr. Hansen was very open and honest, and perhaps the grief of the situation made that so. We certainly appreciated his reaching out, and even if our broadcast to some small part helped with their healing process, it's all that we can. I don't know what to say, honestly.
Nothing much else you can at that point. I mean, it became our most watched host chat show ever, and we don't do it for that reason, obviously. But it was noticeable that 4,700 views later and counting still, it leads up the Evan Hansen tribute page that we're showing you on the screen right now. If you do want to see the life and times of Evan, some recent clips from newscasts and other stuff, periodicals that are out there that they've clipped to discuss what's being done at this point, please go out to this page. It is publicly viewable and worth the look. Look, college football and football in general is a dangerous sport. You know it when you go out there and play it. You do take the risk of it. There are things that we're hoping they can do to lessen the risks of it as the speed and the hits of the game increase as time goes by here. But we need to learn, and we need the education of it. We need to get also Dr. Strickland back on the show to talk about it before the year is out.
The irony, even here in Orlando, some of my other kids, the stepsons who participate in the drum line for their local private school, went to their football game the other night, and they barely have 30, maybe 35 players on the team. My hometown in Connecticut, which is now in an upper division as far as the size of school, it's quadrupled in size, I think, since I attended there. They're having a hard time fielding players, and I think there's definitely this conception that football is dangerous, and it certainly is on one hand, but it's also probably 10, 20 times safer to play than it was when I played, when I was 18 and 16 years old, or 20 whatever. But it's interesting, and we talked with Coach Strock from Wilkes University about some of the technology in the helmets and the way that they can detect impact and all this types of thing. But it is a physical sport, but it is a lot safer than it used to be. I'm not trying to overly defend it, but at the same time, I think the sport is a bit of a crossroads, and we'll see how it goes.
JB, we had 34 games this week, and they were some very good games at that we're going to go through here. We're going to do it quickly. As everybody knows, this is our segment of segments for the host chat that will prove foundation for the rest of the show, and that is the recap of all these games. What's it called?
We're calling this Crunchtime for Week 16 and the games ending October 6th, 2018.
We're going to, as usual, start in the CCC, JB. And look, we got a first-time winner here. Ding, 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 as they say. It is UNE beating Curry 44-42. A game that had 940 total yards of offense in the game. And look, 38-yard field goal with 5 seconds left. You're watching it right here. And quarterback Brian Peters, 25 for 33, 302, and 3 touchdowns. Great effort by UNE. Congratulations to them. And taking Curry out is a shock in and of itself.
Yeah, no, for sure. The Nor'easters have they've come a long way, and just halfway through the season, this is a big win for them, and certainly something they can build on.
In other scores, Endicott 45, Nichols 14, as Kolaski has a pretty efficient day, 19 for 23, 197 and 3 touchdowns. They outgained the Bison by 280 yards, basically doubled them up in terms of offensive yardage.
Yep.
And Salve Regina 31, Becker 8. Salve trying to claw its way back into the picture here at 1-1 in the conference. They rushed for 248 yards and 3 touchdowns. Husson on Friday night. It was them early and often in the ECFC against Dean. We thought this would be a game. It was a game for about the first couple minutes.
Yeah, no, I think you basically can pencil in the Husson Eagles as the first team to qualify for the 2018 NCAA D3 football tournament. They are going to run away with the conference. I don't see anybody catching them from here on out.
Yeah, they are 3-2, but 2-0, and Dean 2-4, 1-1. Husson had defensive and special teams touchdowns in this game. You want to talk about an all-around, the 3 teams you have to worry about scenario. They all did well in that game. In other scores on Saturday, SUNY Maritime 55, Alfred State 14. Alfred State's just struggling this year as the Privateers had 553 yards of total offense. Thomas Wright efficient again with 3 touchdowns and an interception. Anna Maria 31. Castleton 24. Anna Maria's first win. Only 10 wins in 10 seasons for Anna Maria. I actually sat there and counted it.
Wow.
And that was win number 10 against a Castleton team that really we thought might be the only remaining hurdle for Husson. Well, they already have a loss, and they're going to have to win out basically to even have a say in this conference at this point, Castleton. But Anna Maria, congratulations in that game.
Yeah, go Wildcats.
Let's go to the Utica game. Our good friend Peyton Miller, wide receiver,
That's
and
right.
strictly wide receiver basically now. Yeah, he's got another touchdown under his belt at a 33-7 victory against St. John Fisher, a program that's 0-4. They're better than an 0-4 team. There's no doubt about this, okay?
Yeah.
This is very strange to me that they're 0-4, 0-2 right now in the conference. Malcolm Stowe, though, 31 rushes, 120 yards, and a touchdown. Blaise Fagiano, 50 career wins for him in the defense, 4 interceptions for Utica. That's an all-around good performance right there as well for Utica.
Yeah, at 3-2, 1-1, they're still in the mix for potentially a New York State Bowl or perhaps something in the ECAC. So, the Pioneers have been a tough out all season, and they're continuing to chip away. And they've got, second half, we'll see what happens.
Alfred proves me completely wrong on the Buffalo State game. I thought the Bengals would have a chance here. Not so much. 51-7, Alfred. Ben Burke, 240 yards. 2 touchdowns, 73 yards rushing for the Bengals only in that game. Cortland State 51, Morrisville 14. Brett Segala, a lot of efficiency in quarterbacks here. We're seeing 27 for 33,
big numbers.
4 touchdowns, 340. Cortland with 37 unanswered points in that game. And, hey, Brockport, which led, I think, 49 or 48-0 at halftime. 55-7 win by them.
Well, here's the crazy thing, Frank. Brockport was actually averaging, their defense that is, holding teams to -5 or something yards in the 4 games going into this one. And then they put another -37 on the Hawks. So they're probably averaging 10 to 15 negative.
Yep.
It's insane what this defense can do. 4 sacks, 17 tackles for loss, and a two interception performance for the Eagles. Their defense, I don't know if they're up there with the University of Mary Hardin Baylor Crusaders, which I know is a top team on your top 25 ballot, which we'll talk about in a little while. But they are definitely putting up some really impressive national scope numbers so far this season.
We got to fly in the next one because we got two games we want to talk about, and that's the Liberty League. And number 20 RPI 10, number 23 Ithaca 9. In this game, the crucial moments included the touchdown to Gladney with 0 seconds on the clock for Ithaca. They were down 10-3. They go to 10-9. An extra point away from tying the game. That's easy, except it was kicked low into the line, blocked essentially, and the ball's rolling around. And what happens? RPI has players come out onto the field. They catch the fact the referees do while Ithaca's trying to round up the ball to get a 2-point conversion out of it, which they almost succeeded in doing, by the way.
They came close.
And if they'd done it, they would have won the game there. The referees called a penalty. There's no illegal forward pass on this play because the player's knee was down before he tried to shuffle the ball forward. So they had a chance from 1.5 yards out. They tried the gadgetry play of gadgetry plays, and it does not work. They tried to go for 2 for the win, and they failed.
Kind of
RPI hangs on.
Yeah.
Yep, 10-9. RPI only had 162 yards of total offense and wins the game, as Ithaca had many opportunities in RPI territory and could not convert throughout the day. And it was Pazlewski as quarterback for Ithaca, not Wahid Nabi. We don't know what happened there, if it was just the coach's decision or if there's an injury at play, but it was a 10-9 loss for Ithaca.
Yeah, Nabi was suited up and wearing the headset pretty much the whole game. The only thing I can surmise is the 6 interceptions in the games prior with only 3 touchdowns. Maybe it was something that Coach Dan Swanstrom wanted to try to mix things up to go with the senior quarterback instead of the sophomore. At the end of the day, though, RPI's defense showed up and made the plays. Nick Cella pretty much had about close to half of the RPI offense. I mean, George Marinopoulos, sorry, I always mess that one up, Frank. Had a pretty pedestrian day passing the ball. Really didn't have a lot of success, but at the end of the day, the RPI made enough plays to win the game. And kind of a crazy finish, but they're 5-0 and still in the top 20.
Speaking of teams making enough plays to win a game, Hobart 29, Union 28. And the Union was looking to win this game and become a ranked team probably, and they looked like they were going to be able to do it with a 9-point lead, but Hobart gets a field goal and a touchdown to take the 1-point lead midway through the fourth quarter. It took 2 defensive stands, essentially, one with an interception attached to it, for Hobart to end up winning this game. Sure. And congratulations. I mean, it was a 14-3, 21-10, and 28-19 game at certain points. And Ryan Hoffman, 17 for 29, 326, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. His touchdown total is pretty high for the season. That's under reported, I think. It's just, the wins and losses have been kind of plaguing him so that he doesn't get his due credit. Well, give him his credit for yesterday's win. He did a great job.
Yeah, the offense seemed to have some success. I mean, unfortunately, Dakota Harvey looks like his hamstring injury has come back, and so their run game basically disappeared about halfway through the first half, and Union took advantage of that. Andre Ross had a couple of long receptions. The Hobart defense was struggling to cover him, but the Statesmen found success with the wide receiver screen. They had the long passes to Conley and Catalano, which kept them in the game. Kyle Hackett has made something like 80 consecutive kicks if you include field goals and extra points dating back to last season. Kept them close enough.
Needed every one of them yesterday.
It was one of those things. I don't know if it was the Ali Marpet magic. He was there, along with a lot of alumni. So a huge win for Coach Chawal. I'm sure we'll be talking more about that in a later episode.
St. Lawrence 38, U of R 24. Aaron Ruthman with 35 for 52 performance in terms of passing, 347, and a passing and rushing touchdown and interception in that game. In the MAC, hey Wilkes, how you doing? It's John Drock, our former guest, head coach of Wilkes and his team, going to another win here, 3-3, 2-2. They're even up on the season with a 47-43 win on winless Albright, and the game-winning catch with 14 seconds left here. Jeff Stever, as you can see on the screen, nice performance there. Jose Tabora, 28 for 47, 368, 6 touchdowns. What is he, Jagger Green or something? Record. 3 interceptions, and he rushed for 111 yards in that game quickly.
highest scoring game of the weekend, total shootout on both sides. Albright quarterback Jimmy Leahy had 385 passing yards and 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Crazy game. But hey, Wilkes is 2-2 in the league, 3-3 overall. They're having a good season so far.
Misericordia 45, Alvernia 33. The winning streak continues for Misericordia, now at 3-0 in the conference. 928 total yards of offense in the game, including a lot of rushing yards between the two teams. But the thing that's catching my eye in this conference is that Widener, once left for dead, is still a factor.
Yes.
At 41-25 win, 41-25 win over Kings. They are 3-1 in the conference now, and the Pride had a good 38-10 lead at the half. They still have to play Delaware Valley, and there's a lot of time to go between now and then where that could be basically the MAC conference title game if they can just keep winning. So, hey, maybe they stop Googling things a wider. I don't know what happened exactly to change things up, but they are still alive. And Stevenson 36, Leval 7, as Stevenson bounces back after that loss, that disheartening loss, really, against Del Val the previous week. Ty Crabb in for Dan Williams as quarterback, 312 total yards, a pass, and 2 rush TDs. Let's go to the MASCAC. Framingham State 26, Fitchburg State 7. Adam Wojcinski, easy for me to say, 13 for 23, 155, 3 touchdowns. But Karan Wright's the one that caught my eye here with his 30-yard rushing touchdown that put it away. This made it 22-0 in the third quarter for Framingham State. You know what? They are looking like that team that's going to take on WestCon. I'm going to also mention the score here in the same breath, 44-25. They beat Worcester State, and it's the first time since 2001 the Colonials have started 5-0. Am I off my rocker to think that we're probably just buying time until this game plays?
Yeah, I think so. I think these are clearly the 2 top teams in the conference. Plymouth State's sort of fallen off the radar from last season, so all things are pointing towards the Rams and the Colonials crashing into each other at some point real soon.
Bridgewater State beat Plymouth State 19-13. Bridgewater State, though, still technically a factor here at 4-2 and 3-1 in the conference, so don't count them out yet. And Westfield State 38, Mass Maritime 24. In that game, it was an out-rushing match, 340-80 in terms of the Owls out-rushing the Bucks in that game. In the NUMAC, I was at this game. Merchant Marine Academy trailed by 11 points just after the start of the fourth quarter. They score 18 unanswered, check that, 20 unanswered points because they got a safety at the end of the game. And congratulations to them. Luke Jamison gave them the go-ahead touchdown that is not pictured here. But look at the winning, or what would be the tying touchdown technically once you put the 2-point conversion on top of it. Those 2 videos are right here. Yeah. And great job, Krystian, Abbott, and Luke Jamison. We'll have interviews with them coming up if you're watching the Facebook show here. But Abbott, 201 total yards, 2 passing touchdowns, filling the shoes well of Bryce Moore.
Yeah, he's definitely able to run the triple option, but he's also able to step back and throw the ball, which is what you need from time to time to make things interesting. So Abbott definitely has picked up where Bryce Moore left off, and here 4-1, the Mariners are going to be taking on Springfield next weekend in a really big game that could help decide how the NUMAC plays out.
Springfield 26, Coast Guard 12. There's a situation, as you're just kind of giving the prelude to, where Springfield needed to beat Coast Guard because Coast Guard was 2-0 in the conference coming into that game. MIT 35, Maine Maritime 0. MIT moves to 6-0, the only team in the East region at 6-0 because everybody else has played either 5 or 4 games that are undefeated. WPI 24, Catholic 0. WPI still a factor with only 1 loss in the conference. A lot of games to be played in that conference. A lot of things could change. It's a really good conference race to watch. In the NJAC, 2 games we want to feature here. First, Frostburg State, the number 5 team in the country, 35. Wesley, 34, the number 6 team in the country. Bobcats scored with 2:43 remaining in this game to win the game by 1, and it took a stand defensively to make sure they could hold the victory. Great job by Delane Fitzgerald and his crew on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it was the first time the Bobcats have actually beaten Wesley, if not ever, since like 2003 or something like that. It goes way back. Ultimately, it was, I think, the turnovers that did the Wolverines in. Kalik Burrows with some touchdowns, but also 3 interceptions. There was that one special teams play that the Wolverines made to take the lead back, but Connor Cox and company drove down the field and scored the winning touchdown with about 2.5 minutes left and hung on for a big 35-34 win.
But Salisbury needed to win against Christopher Newport to stay in the race themselves. They did so. It took overtime, though, at Christopher Newport, 27-24 overtime. Christopher Newport scores a field goal to go up 24-21. Salisbury wins on a touchdown run, as you're seeing here. The Seagulls rushed for 225 yards and passed for nothing, if that's correct in my stat sheet here.
That's right.
Salisbury wins with no pass yards.
2 passes. Yeah, there's only 2 pass attempts in the whole game. They didn't pan out. But the freshman quarterback is doing a good job for the Seagulls, and they are undefeated still.
Montclair State 28, the College of New Jersey 0, or TCNJ. Montclair is now 5-0. Again, it's one of those it's quietly happened scenarios, and we'll see where this goes. They've got to play the meat of their schedule, obviously, still with Frostburg, Wesley, and Salisbury coming up. Kane 16, William Patterson 0. Kane shuts somebody else out this time. It's their first win of the season. They're 1-4. William Patterson 0-5. Somebody had to win in that game. And let's go to the NESCAC to finish things up. And Amherst, they surprised me that they were able to handle Middlebury the way they did. It's 21-0. I thought Middlebury would show a pulse in that game. Chase Trunnell with 2 rushing touchdowns. Wesleyan 28, Colby 20. They moved to 2-2, does Wesleyan, and it's 2 final scores by Colby. Late, they tried to get back in this game, but nothing doing there.
Yeah.
Mark Picarello with 269 total yards, 3 touchdowns as quarterback. Tufts 28, Bowdoin 0. Jumbos outgained the Polar Bears by 300 yards almost. Williams 31, Bates 7. 4-0 Williams. They're just rolling towards that matchup with Amherst. We keep saying it every week. TJ Dozier with 12 rushes, 151 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Trinity 44, Hamilton 7. Trinity at 3-1, trying to stay alive here. They are technically. They're going to have to hope for some help, though, along the way, as Jordan Visano with 3 passing touchdowns in that game. Any games jump out at you in that before we close out?
Well, the thing I think is funny, Frank, is that out of the 34 games, we had 6 shutouts, and they all happened in the NEWMAC, NESCAC, and NJAC.
It's the ends.
I don't know.
The 3 ends. But nonetheless, James, that was crunch time for the games of October 6th, 2018. Why don't we go to the right year here?
It's not week 16, Frank.
I don't know who would think such a thing there, JB.
Right.
So let's get to our recap here. And our recap normally goes like this. We're going to have a couple player interviews, a coach interview, and then look at the standings across the board. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Well, let's start with the player interviews, and we had Krystian Abbott, the quarterback we were talking about in crunch time, and Luke Jamison, the receiver, both juniors. Krystian is from Kansas. Luke is from Florida. We talked about that briefly in this interview. And Jamison had the game-winning touchdown ultimately in that game. They were down 11 points late, and I thought they were toast, to be honest with you. And lo and behold, it was just... I love being on the sideline for games like these because it's just magical what starts happening. When the regiment came down, the student section came down to do their push-ups, but they still had to wait for the 2-point conversion, and you had them in the background there, hooting and hollering and everything else. Just a moment you don't forget, and we had, I think, a coach on Twitter basically say he could watch it 400 times or something like that just because everything was perfect about that play. 2-point conversion, leaping in for the pylon, right at my feet, basically. And you can see the regiment in the background, of course. So let's go to the interview with the players, and we'll be right back. Frank Rousey here with Krystian Abbott and Luke Jamison, 2 juniors, one from Kansas, I think, one from Florida, if I remember correctly. And after a big 33-24 victory, guys, we'll start with Krystian. Things were looking a little grim there, down 11 points in the fourth quarter, and it took your arm, really, which is kind of not really what you expect from the triple option offense, maybe if you're not Salisbury out there. So what exactly was going through your mind when you saw you're down by 11 and knew it probably would come down to a passing game eventually?
Sir, as our coach says, players make plays. So whatever we got to do to get it done. It was a little rough at first. It took us a little bit to get started, but ultimately he made a big play, and we know that we can trust each and every person on the football field.
Luke, Bryce Moore was quarterback before this year. Krystian wasn't really taking snaps. You were used to a different quarterback. Here he comes in, and you end up with a game-winning touchdown ultimately in this game because of it. Tell me about his gameplay today.
I mean, he's been great, man. This guy works so hard. And that's part of our program. It doesn't matter if you're a 2 or a 3. You got to work your tail off in practice, and he did that, stepped up great. He's filled the role, and he didn't miss a step. You know, kids, we've all been grinding together, and easy transition for him.
So, stick with you for a second. After the MIT loss, things looked a little grim, especially now, you know, down halftime, down 3 quarters, down into the 4th quarter. Is this team gelling when adversity hits it the most? Is that what's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's just been a goal of mine has been to compete every single play. And I think as an offense and as a whole team, we're just trying to compete. And that doesn't matter if we're down 11 in the second half or if we're up 20. You know, we're just trying to win one play at a time and keep grinding. And I think we did a really good job of that today, not letting anything get to our heads. And, yeah, we've been doing a good job, John, I think.
Krystian, filling Bryce Moore's shoes, not an easy job, obviously. After a game like today, do you get a little more comfort in that? And what did it take really for you to get the confidence to fill those shoes?
So we started in this preseason, and this is a new year. We love Bryce. Bryce is a great kid, great quarterback, but this is a new year, a new team, and a new us. So we had to do what we had to do. We had to get here on our own, and yes, they built the foundation for us. Bryce Moore, excellent quarterback, great kid, he was amazing. But they built the foundation for us, and we're just taking it to the next level.
Okay, guys, it's shout-out time. Come on, get back in this shot. Come on. You got to say hi to your friends and family and everything. Take one step back. Now they can see all of you. Now go ahead and say hello and give your shout-outs to all your friends, family, teammates, whoever may be watching.
What's up, Mom? What's up, Cato? What's up, Hannah, Rachel, Lydia? I love you guys. I'll be home soon.
Florida, right?
Yeah.
What part of Florida?
Jupiter,
Florida. I know it. I pass by it every so often. Sir?
Mom, Dad, I know you're here. Laura, I know you're here. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you so much for the support. I couldn't have done this without you guys, my little brother Caleb, and the Lord. So thank you all, and we're taking it day by day.
Congratulations, guys. Big win, 33-24. Enjoy it.
Thanks for having us.
And that was Merchant Marine quarterback Krystian Abbott and wide receiver Luke Jamison. But you're not watching our show just for them. I know you're not. You're watching our show for Mike Toop. Aren't you? Yes, exactly. Mike Toop is the only head coach I know that will stop in his tracks during a game, see me on the sideline, come over and try to have a conversation with me during the game. Okay? And then bust my balls, basically. I guess I can say that because it's the internet. But about life in general and my predictions and everything else. And love the man. But he didn't love to see me, I don't think, at halftime when I crossed his path and he was not having a great moment. Yep. No, he had his own team in his crosshairs at that point because at halftime he was not a happy camper. But he took over some of the defensive play calling this year, and they weren't showing up until the 4th quarter. We talked about that here. Mike Toop with me. Toop, what are you doing to me, Toop?
You. Now you know I'm bald.
Well, we can't quite. Oh, dude, there it is. Okay, put it back on. You're glaring our audience.
It's gone.
I can't quite imitate what you just did on the sideline. I've imitated you before this season, but
yeah, that was a poor effort, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's about as good as it gets for me. But your team's down 11 points. You were kind of keen on looking over the defense today, as you were kind of whispering to me on the sideline at one point. You couldn't have been too happy about the performance, let's say 3 quarters and about 2 minutes into this game. What did you say? What changed?
I think we went, I thought we played pretty solid until really the second half last week. We gave up a couple big plays, and frankly, we looked a lot like a year ago on defense in the second half of MIT and really most of the game today. And really, I think a lot of that had to do with Norwich because they got some kids who can make plays, obviously. But we kind of played not to lose, I thought. Then we're down by 11, and I thought the kids let it hang out. You know, we made a couple plays defensively and made a couple in the kicking game, which were big. And, you know, the kids, you know, they played to win, and that's what you got to do. If you play on your heels on defense, usually they take you all the way into the end zone. I did that a few times.
Krystian Abbott seems like kind of a very, I don't want to say timid guy, at least on camera, but a little more soft-spoken than maybe Bryce Moore was before the season. And he sort of found his voice in his arm in that fourth quarter.
Yeah.
What did you see in him coming into the season that gave you the confidence that he could be that guy?
We knew from an athletic standpoint he gave us what we wanted at the position. He throws the ball as well as anyone at that position since Derek Ventry, who when we went to it in the middle of the season back in 2010. So we knew throwing the ball, that was an added dimension because he throws it better than, you know, Bryce did. You know, and Vitelli and Jamison make plays, you know, 2-7's making plays for us this year. So we knew, you know, he's not as big. You know, he doesn't bench 350 and squat 560 like Bryce did. So it's why you hate the offense, because you got a smaller guy like that taking hits, it kind of accumulates. But he's smart enough, you know, and I think he may be a little bit soft-spoken, but I don't think you'll find a tougher kid. He certainly showed some grit today, that's for sure. Even your field goal kicker got in on the act, a 42-yard field goal. But there was that moment where you're down by 8. You had a chance to kick a field goal, maybe get the ball back. You decided to go for it, and it led to the touchdown. What was going through your mind before you looked like a genius? Well, you know, you look at the clock, and it was a little over 6 minutes, and I just felt the field goal. We kick it deep. Now, if we're fortunate enough to stop them right away and punt, you know, chances are we got to try and drive 70 yards, and it could be maybe 3 minutes or 2.5, and obviously we weren't very I don't know, consistent offensively. Obviously, we were struggling, so we weren't real consistent. I just said, hey, because I thought defensively we were playing better in the fourth quarter. So if we didn't get it, at least we had them down there, and I thought maybe, you know, hopefully we can hold them and get the ball with better field position if we didn't get it.
So you got a couple big games coming up here.
Yeah.
I believe, Springfield and WPI, is that the next two in line? You're at Springfield, then home versus WPI. How do you carry the momentum of this game into games against two juggernauts like those two teams?
You know, Springfield, they're banged up, but you know, they're still defending champs until people say otherwise. So, and we're going up there, and it's their homecoming, and you know, we know what they got. So, hey, it's why you do this. So we know we have to play a lot better than we did today to be in the game. But hey, I know one thing: my guys are going to show up. My guys will show up.
How proud are you of them right now?
Always. You know, they probably didn't think so at halftime, based on what I said. But and fortunately, my AD wasn't outside the locker room, so I'm not fired. But yeah, you know,
I can
they're
tell
academy kids, and they play like it. And sometimes they don't play as smart as they should, in my opinion. But when it came to crunch time, they showed up and made plays when they had to.
I was just going to say, I saw you on your way to the locker room with your team, and you were stoic
I
as
wasn't
could
too
be.
happy.
No, you were not. Coach, 33-24 victory will make you happy, though.
Yes, it will.
Congratulations,
Ross, thanks
sir.
a lot, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Tooper is just Tooper. That's for darn sure. I love the man, and it was great to be there for that moment for him, because that was huge to turn things around the way they did. What does that make him? 4-1 this season now, and still with a say in certain situations in the new MAC. Will they win the new MAC? Probably not. We'll see what happens. He'll probably clip that and say, "Ross, what the heck are you saying? We can't win this. My guys will play as hard as they can. I know we're undermanned." And by the way, he thinks I do a very weak impersonation of him, which is correct.
Well, maybe it was divine intervention, Frank, because I did see something pop up in social media that the Mariners adopted Mikey Weinstein 6 years ago this past week, and so maybe Mikey was there, and maybe that helped fuel the comeback. I know that we've missed him since he left us a couple of years ago, but when I saw that comeback happen, and when I kind of think about it now, maybe there's a little divine intervention there. Mikey's calling the plays from way on up there, and the Mariners made it happen. So
actually, he may have been calling plays from way up there. Jaden Daly still brings his picture out next to his broadcast position. They've moved him up to the top floor this year because they've actually installed stairs in the press box for the future ESPN3 game against Coast Guard. But they knocked out Jaden's position basically by doing that. They took out the box, so they put him upstairs. But Jaden he still brings out Mikey's picture with the team. He's missed. He still is, and I believe the seniors still had the interaction with him back when on this team. And Chrissy Weinstein has been back since, obviously, and she always likes our stuff when we post stuff about Mercer Marine Academy. That family is still a family for sure. But congratulations to Toop and his guys on the win. Let's quickly go to the standings here that we normally look at. And let's go in a certain order here. Let's start with the Commonwealth again, CCC. And, Endicott and Western New England, it looks like we are on that collision course there a little bit. I mean, a lot can happen between now and then, folks, so we get that. But, Curry, Western New England looked like a great game coming into the season. Right now, Skip Bandini and his crew need to, hope they can even survive in that game because of what's been happening. They lost the University of New England, for goodness sake. I mean, that's not supposed to happen. Yeah. And now Western New England will face them at 1 o'clock on Saturday. Again, the game between Western New England and Endicott circled for November 3rd. Endicott's got to play at University of New England. Could they pull off 2 straight stunning upsets? I don't know. It's doubtful, but we'll see what happens in that conference.
Well, I think Endicott is the host of that Week 10 game, Frank. So that'll definitely be a big one. But yeah, right now, they're gonna take on UNE. They'll travel to Becker. Both teams that I think only have 1 or 2 wins between them, and then they have their bye. So yeah, I mean, I think all roads are pointing towards that Week 10 matchup between the Golden Bears and the Gulls.
ECFC we talked about in Crunchtime to a certain degree. Husson at 3-2 is 2-0 in the conference. Gallaudet is 1-0. Castleton still has to play Husson as well. So there are some different permutations you could try to make in this situation, but let's face it, Husson may be able to clinch this conference as early as Week 9 because they play their final conference game in Week 10. They play Plymouth State in Week 11, but it could be Husson Gallaudet. Gallaudet is their Week 10 game, and again, if it's something to watch, we'll have it on the D3 Blitzer show. So if Gallaudet can continue to stay at 0 or 1 losses, we may have something to actually talk about in Week 10. But if Gallaudet loses in the meantime, and the carnage starts happening at the 1-loss area, then we know, honestly, Husson's going to be walking into the playoffs at that point in time. It's Dean could have done a lot to save this conference. Not pitting it all on you guys, Dean, but it didn't quite happen that way. JB, let's go to the MASCAC next. And WestCon 5-0, 3-0. Framingham State 4-1, 3-0. But Bridgewater State looming there. UMass Dartmouth still a little bit of a factor, but WestCon did beat them for that loss situation. Let's see what Bridgewater State has left here, because folks might wonder. First off, they'll play UMass Dartmouth. So one of those 2 teams will be at 2 losses by the end of the weekend. And then Bridgewater State plays WestCon after that. And they'll have Worcester State and Mass Maritime. So it was Framingham State that had beaten Bridgewater back when, if memory serves here, it was 34-13. But they can still have a say here. First things first, UMass Dartmouth, then Western Connecticut. So don't overlook Bridgewater State, but again, right now it looks like the collision course is still on between Western Connecticut and Framingham State, and that game is going to be on Week 10 at 5 o'clock. So interesting timing for that game. Won't be on our Blitzer show because of the time, and assuming we do one, anomalies like that, we should be pressuring them to move up that time of that game, shouldn't we? But that is, flex the game. That's great. I didn't even think of using that. But that's where we are there in that conference, and people call up and suggest it. They would love that idea from us, I'm sure. NUMAC action. MIT 6-0, Springfield 5-1. What week is that game, guys? That is a Week 11 game, noontime. But first things first, Merchant Marine at Springfield. Look at Merchant Marine just looming there with one loss. They've lost to MIT, but can Merchant Marine get some payback at the top of the standings against Springfield? If they do that, MIT would be thrilled to see that happen, although MIT obviously still has some tough games ahead of it. So we'll see what happens there. What are your thoughts here? The NUMAC race, to me, is one of the best ones we have to watch upcoming here. The NJAC, obviously, is as well, and the MAC. But this one, it just seems like there's so much parity, especially with Chad Shade still not playing. What do you think happens here?
Well, it's interesting because there's other games that Coast Guard has been a tough out so far, and they're playing MIT in, I think it's week 7. And then you have MIT playing WPI in week 8. So, I mean, MIT, they could keep winning, or they could get tripped up. You could see Springfield, rise to the top. Maybe Merchant Marine knocks them off next weekend. I do feel like, as far as all the conferences out there, this one feels, along with the NJAC, there's definitely a lot of parity here and could go a lot of different ways.
And speaking about going a lot of different ways, Liberty League, because we're only one game into the conference season, it could go a lot of different ways too. RPI Hobart St. Lawrence 1-0. RPI 5-0. Look, they may not have put up the offensive numbers that would thrill a team yesterday, but they won 10-9. And you can't take that away from them. And Ithaca is just having struggles offensively. Their defense is something special this year. It's the offense that's the problem right now. They can't put up the points they need to when they need to. Look at that St. John Fisher game. They needed scores in that second half, couldn't get them. It was 21-14, and St. John Fisher almost came back to bite them in that game, but the defense stood up and got an interception there. So this is an interesting conference. This could be one of those situations like 2010 when St. Lawrence came out of nowhere and bit everybody in the backside at 5-5 to win the conference. This could be one of those seasons because I can't say any one of these teams is overly, a cut above the rest. RPI might be. They're going to have to keep proving themselves. And I understand we've had them as the upset special 3 different times on D3Football.com. But I don't know. They are cardiac. They almost ended up in overtime yesterday. They had a triple overtime game against Utica earlier in the season. So they are not a sure thing in any game, that's for sure right now. But Union, they lost. Hobart, not a consistent team. We'll talk to Coach DeWall later in the week about that a little bit. Can you gain any traction on what to think about this conference?
No, I think we're just going to have to see how it plays out. Hobart will travel to RPI in a couple weeks, and that should be a big game for both teams. I think right now it's anybody's conference. It's sort of wide open.
Brockport at Alfred is coming up in just Saturday at, I want to say, noontime. Is that not correct? A huge game, 1 o'clock actually. Brockport at Alfred, 1 o'clock game. Yeah. Alfred has bounced back since that loss to Ithaca back on September 15th. And I thought they were a shaky team at that time, and they have just kept winning. A close one against Cortland, close one against Morrisville State, and then blew the wheels off of Buffalo State 51-7. Brockport, they're looking strong. They kept a Hartwick team that we thought might put up a little bit of a fight offensively at bay. So early thoughts on this game, because this is pretty much right now the de facto conference title game for some people's minds. I don't think we can quite do that yet here, but it's feeling it. It's feeling quite interesting right now.
Yeah, I think the fact that Ben Burke and Naz Smith are starting to come into their own with the Saxons offense has helped. I mean, their defense is always tough, but I do feel like the Saxons are starting to hit their stride offensively, which I don't think they really had when they played Ithaca early in the season. So I do feel like this will be a tough out for Brockport, but their defense is really playing at such an elite level right now. It would be hard pressed to think that they would struggle, but it'll depend on how Joe Germanero and company handle the Saxons defense, which will be pretty fired up playing at home, especially since they almost beat the Golden Eagles last season.
Delaware Valley, Misericordia. I have trouble saying that with a straight face right now. Those are the teams that are undefeated this deep into the season for the MAC. Del Val plays Lycoming at noon. Misericordia is at Lebanon Valley. Now, there's a test for them because Lebanon Valley is no pushover team, okay? And we'll see what Misericordia is made of, I think, next week to a certain degree at 1 o'clock in that game. Lycoming at Del Val, boy, after the FDU Florham game, we thought that, Lycoming was going to be the team that would start rolling toward Del Val, and then they lost that game, what was it, a couple weeks ago against, as I'm looking, Kings, which is, that befuddled us at that point in time. Also, you got to look at that Wilkes FDU Florham game at 7 o'clock on Friday night. There's a nice little nightcap feature coming up
that
for
could
FDU
be like
Florham.
100 points right there. That looks like a lot of offense in that game.
Yeah, we had Jagger Green throw for 6 touchdowns in his last game, right? And then Wilkes quarterback throw for 6 touchdowns in his last game. So, yeah,
a lot of points there. But Stevenson Widener is interesting, Frank, because we were talking earlier about the Pride and how they've sort of resurrected themselves. They sit at 3-1 in the conference. If they can beat Stevenson, they set themselves up for a very interesting matchup, as we know, down the stretch. They will host Del Val in Week 11, and I think it's a cup, either like a Keystone Cup or something like that, rivalry game. So that could be an interesting thing if the Pride can keep notching off wins in the MAC.
And Jack, anyone's guess what you can think here, but Salisbury, Montclair State, Frostburg State, and then Wesley looming with 1 loss, and everybody else underneath with 2 losses. Those are your 4 teams you got to deal with, but we keep highlighting this idea that Montclair State has got to play the meat of their schedule still. That starts this Saturday at Salisbury. Then after that, it's going to be for Montclair, Frostburg at home. And then after that, Montclair at Wesley. So they're going to face the Juggernauts coming up here in the next 3 weeks. For Frostburg, it's William Patterson this coming week. Wesley takes on Kane. So the Montclair-Salisbury matchup is the highlight matchup, obviously, for this week. We'll see which one of these two walks away is still undefeated in the conference. And if Montclair can somehow get through that game and beat Salisbury, then I think I'm traveling to Montclair State the following week. There's no way to avoid it at that point. Frostburg at Montclair on the 20th at 12 o'clock. That game, I might go to that game either way, but, I mean, there's a lot more on the line if they win than if they lose. Granted, they're fighting for their lives if they lose against Salisbury in that game, whereas they're sort of just trying to keep their lead with Frostburg State if they win the game. You got to think Salisbury's the early favorite, no?
Yeah, I think so for sure. The way they've been playing both offensively and defensively, they probably are. Montclair has found ways to eke out certain games. They're going to be really tested with the Seagulls on the road in Maryland.
In the NESCAC, Amherst, Tufts, and Williams all 4-0. And when does Amherst play Tufts and Williams for that matter? Let's see. Williams-Tufts is on the 20th of October. Another big game there. And Amherst Tufts is the following week. So first things first, Middlebury at Williams and Colby at Amherst and Tufts at Trinity. Well, there's a survival game if I have ever seen one right there. Tufts at Trinity at 1:30. That's going to be kind of our focus game probably next week. But Trinity, with that loss to Williams, needs to win it, especially here to have any say in the NESCAC, and it could be a good one.
I think actually the Bantams will probably figure out a way to win out in this one and kind of make things interesting down the stretch. I mean, they ultimately will play Amherst in Week 10, and then they have Wesley in Week 11, which I think by that point, So basically, at this stage, the Bantams they have to win out to create some type of tiebreaker advantage, like we've seen in the past with the NESCAC. But I think actually I would pick them hosting the Jumbos. We'll see how it goes.
That's all 9 conferences, JB, and where they stand at this point in time. You talked about my top 25 ballot. Yes, I did move UMHB to number 1 after their trouncing of Hardin-Simmons. Hardin-Simmons is a team that averaged nearly 700 yards a game, I think it was, coming into this matchup between the two teams. And they were held to, I believe, 203 yards, give or take. Before the final drive, I think it was 203, so it may have been more like 250, but you can tell just how well the UMHB defense played and is playing. A lot of red zone opportunities given away by UMHB, and they still won that game going away. Look, you compare Mount Union to John Carroll in that game. You compare UMHB to Hardin-Simmons. They're both John Carroll and Hardin-Simmons in the same vicinity right now on my ballot. And you say one team took care of business from start to finish. One team struggled. In one, but struggled. And that's how I'm drawing the distinction right now, that UMHB, with quarterbacks that can throw this season, and throw well for that matter, didn't really need it last night. They only had, I think, 11 total pass attempts. But, Jace Hammock and Luke Porman and Denarian, a 3-headed quarterback monster going on down there. And they're all special in their own ways. We've heard that, and they are. And with that, that's actually made Markeith Miller a real asset to that team more than he ever was, because it's opened up the run game. And that's added a dimension to their offense now, the pass game has. So passing and offense and defense, they look strong for UMHB, and that's why I flopped the two teams. Obviously, Frostburg State remains above Brockport and Wesley, and then RPI and Del Val round out my East Region teams that are in my top 25. Del Val above RPI currently. None of the Liberty League teams right now, to me, personally look like teams that are in top 25 positions normally. But there is enough mediocrity throughout the entire nation that allows me to right now say that they should be in probably that number 23 zone where I have them right now. Thoughts?
All right. Season of mediocrity.
After like the top 10 or top 11 teams, really, what is there at that point in terms of standout teams? There's not much. It's all blending together. We usually see tiers. We usually see the top 5, then 5 to 15, then 15 through 25, and then the rest. Right now, everything from 10 to 30 is blending to me, or 11 to 30.
I think so. Yeah, I don't know if I'd call that mediocrity or if it's just sort of a toss-up. I mean, there's any team can win at any given moment. So I guess time will tell. We won't really know until the playoffs if an RPI defense is sort of average or if they actually have an elite type of unit, which they may or may not. We'll find out if they get to play a team like a Brockport or if they play, somebody like a, Mary Hardin Baylor or something like that. But, time will tell. For now, though, I think that the East Region races are sort of slowly taking shape. I think we have a few clear favorites, and, we'll have a couple of games over the next few weeks. It's going to be sort of a slow build with a lot culminating on that Week 10, November 3rd weekend.
On that note, JB, let's say goodbye for now. Kevin DeWall later in the week with us, and then a player guest as well. But thanks again to Krystian Abbott and Luke Jamison and Coach Toop from Merchant Marine Academy for joining us on this show. And thank you, sir. It's going to be an interesting week 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 coming up here. We are over the hump, as it says right down there, or somewhere around it. Yeah, but you know where it is. But we are over the hump, and this season is more than half over. It's kind of flown by in certain ways. For most teams, I think that's the case. Some maybe not. Who knows? But we got 5 more weeks of regular season action to come, and you know where to find it, right here on In the Huddle.